this still believing in pop thing, kind of against all odds. Today, it's said that media technologies and various forms of participation have taken over in constructing identities and in terms of identification. And but with your music, it sounds to me like it's very passionate about, it has a kind of passionate feeling of pop. So how do you come to still believe in pop?
I guess the question of pop's potential to me is an artistic question, and it isn't a political one. So if we're determined to think pop's power, I think it must be done, by thinking it as an artistic activity. So I think it's important to draw that distinction. I'm sorry. Because from the outset, I should immediately say, right, that what we're doing right now is talking about these. It's a completely different activity, of course, than music making. It's its own kind of creative enterprise, and so. If we're going to be trying to approach pop's power, it has to be done, I think, in the same way we talk about the power of any great work or something like this. You know what I mean? There's always that moment, ideally, right, that resists the concept, that resists the already named, that resists the already known, the identifiable, and these are the mechanisms, of course, of the state, the known, the identifiable identities, like you were saying here. So in that sense, it becomes a radical political moment, I think. But it's no substitute, of course, for actual radical politics. You know what I mean? Mobilization of the collective against the state is something else altogether than writing songs or making movies or something like this.
I mean, in some parts you might have touched the next question. How would it would be like? How would you describe your conception of pop, and what is the truth of pop? To quote this subtitle from Adam Harper's book about you. It's a big word, the truth of pop. I like it. I mean,
no, but of course I don't mean that in any kind of positive way or any kind of. I obviously don't mean that in the sense of correspondence or something. I mean it, in the more ecstatic sense, in the sense of what is always already outside of the known. I mean it in terms of potentiality or void, the truth in this sense, right? Something that's trans-historical or trans-cultural in this sense, in that it's always already outside something else. Something else. It could be used synonymously with truth as I'm using it here. The something else of pop. But yeah, no, I mean, the question, what is my conception of it? I mean, I think that's the activity we're engaged, that's a question we're engaged with when we make it, right? Is precisely that, an endless unfolding of that, endlessly proceeding towards an answer to that, this is it's the question mark is what it is when we're making pop. But there's a couple ways we could get at what is the concept of pop. Now, I mean, obviously in the work is the main way when we're doing our work. But in discourse, talking about it now, trying to think it in this kind of language. I've done, when I've talked about this before, I think one of the interesting ways, and has been done in the past, is pop as opposed to quote-unquote serious music or so-called serious music. Of course, there's famous essays by philosophers and stuff like that on that try to get at what pop is by juxtaposing it with older quote-unquote serious music. And so if we look at it that way, I mean, we can see kind of negatively what it doesn't have, that all these disparate music from disparate situations all had. It doesn't have thematic development in the strict German romantic sense or something like that. It doesn't have tonality in that kind of old-fashioned sense of the adventure from the one to the, you know what I mean, key in that old-fashioned sense. These kinds of things, that's one way to distinguish it. I think we could approach it as by juxtaposing it in that way. But also another way, I think, in this, here I'm following this experimental composer Michael Pissarro, who suggested that there's been 4 musical truths of the 20th century, 4 procedures, 4 groups of subjects that have exercised fidelity to this ineffable, always absent void of a situation, an artistic situation. And it was, of course, the event of Schoenberg, up until Xenakis and Stockhausen, this whole group of people unpacking that idea, right? And then there was the American experimental tradition, of which he is still working in with Cage and Feldman and these guys. Of course, jazz from Armstrong to Coltrane, these people unpacking this. And then there's pop or rock or punk or whatever you want to call it. I think punk's probably the best name, but I'm always saying pop. Beginning in 55 or whatever, with Chuck Berry or Elvis Presley or whatever, and continuing through the Pistols and the Beatles or Beatles Pistols, and then up until today. So that's the procedure of pop, and how would we define it? I think it remains to be conceptualized adequately. I'm ill prepared to do it here.
Okay, so in case these questions might seem a bit odd to you, it's because it's a feature. It's not a feature alone about your music, but it's a feature about something called the art of the pop song or so. And what I want to do is have 2 totally different conceptions of pop speaking against each other. So I want to have your conception, and I want to have some really kind of mainstream songcraft man in that feature. And that's why I asked the next question. And maybe that's understandable, because this word like pop in Germany, or maybe in England as well, has always kind of, or at least in the last 20, 25, 30 years, it's a kind of, it's a kind
pejorative.
of, I'm sorry?
Pejorative. It's
a big word.
It's an insult.
No, not really an insult. It's more like the best thing you can do as an artist and still reach a mass audience.
Uh-huh.
So if kind of the idea of avant-garde and innovation in music combined with certain structural elements that define or might define the pop song come together and reach people, so broader people, not broader people, reach a kind of a broader audience.
Uh-huh.
And kind of great pop music. When last time people spoke about great pop, like for instance, good moments of Michael Jackson were considered to be great pop music.
And I think with somebody like Michael Jackson and his collaborations with Quincy Jones and stuff like that, I think it would have been interesting to see if it was actually a detriment to them that they were so wrapped up with capital, with money, with production and this kind of thing. Like you almost wonder what a genius like Michael Jackson might have been able to share with the world had he not been so wrapped up in all of that, nonsense, which is what it is. A lot of the top 40 music today, people talk about what I'm doing as interchangeable with that in a certain sense. I don't think so. I mean, because I'm not selling tennis shoes and stuff like this. You know what I mean? That's just a commercial for the world. There's nothing. When I talk about pop, I'm talking about this whole, I know it sounds ridiculous, but a musical truth, like on par with Viennese classicism or Schoenberg and jazz and all this kind of stuff. There's a group of subjects that we militantly claim fidelity to this idea, and it's not there's nothing of pop in this sense, of the truth of pop, or however you'd want to say it, to these celebrities. You know what I mean? That's just, that's something else entirely. That's actually what any kind of, politics that's worthwhile should actually be probably trying to overthrow and beat down or whatever. I don't know. Yeah. But I think that's something else entirely than pop. I mean, you also mentioned in this question low fidelity, which is the lo-fi thing, a separate question. I think that's a question about this moment where, of course, there's always been people that have recorded, using out-of-date technology and things like that. But I think, and I could be wrong, and perhaps a better student of popular music history could correct me on this, but I think it's just recently become mobilized consciously as an expressive dimension of the work. Do you know what I mean? Using low fidelity in production, using obsolescent technology and so on in this way, consciously for the work, not out of necessity, not out of economic necessity, but for the possibilities that it affords expressively. So yes, with respect to the question of lo-fi, that's kind of how I would think about that. Maybe there's nothing new to that idea, but it's an integral part, I think, of pop music, that it involves media in this way. That's its timbral dimension. That's its, the dimension of the sound of the sound. In here, even though I would ordinarily always resist some kind of organic evolution of one music into another, I feel like just for the sake of saying it here, we do subsume the electronic avant-garde, because all of the if there what's important is the dimension of listening timbrally. If that's a very significant part of those compositions, the kinds of envelopes that the frequencies and noises and stuff have, pop definitely takes that up into itself in an interesting way, and low fidelity would be one of these things, you know what I mean, where you have frequency spectrums changing from one, this kind of thing. I don't know, maybe I'm...
Yeah, it maybe leads to the next question. Or the next question could add to that, like, speaking of your musical idiom, it's kind of 80s synth-pop and film, television soundtracks, but like the lyrics you do and the structure of the songs, which are kind of classical in a way, they could also be played with a band, and they could also be played on sounding like the Human League in '81, so like really upfront sounding. So anyway, why this? Did you choose this kind of idiom?
In some English things, when I'm talking about this, it somehow comes out. Now I've said a couple times, and I really believe this, that each music, pop music, whatever, I was talking about different kinds of musics, is absolutely singular. It's its own trajectory, right? But nevertheless, I mean, obviously there's certain, things that are not unique to that language. It's just essentially singular, and so obviously harmony is not unique to pop music. So when people start to, when they bring up the '80s thing, my mind automatically goes to another kind of music altogether that had similar harmonies in a certain sense, which is this medieval and Renaissance. If you get rid of the cadences, if you get rid of the whole dimension of voice leading, which it is essentially entirely reducible to, and just look at it in a way that perhaps they didn't in terms of chords, in terms of vertical sonorities, that's the modal harmony there that I'm interested in. And so it wasn't, Joy Division or Human League or something like that. It was the interesting harmonies that these one way of talking about it would be like church harmonies or something like that. The old modal, ethereal, you know what I mean? This is what I think maybe a more, I guess I understand when people say it's 80s or it sounds like the 80s. I mean, I'm using synthesizers and drum machines and the harmonies they were interested in then are also, I think, a productive place for us to explore. But I don't see it as a question of retro. I guess that's what I'm kind of saying when I talk about medieval and Renaissance. It's obviously an entirely different kind of music, but the point is just that if it's retro, I'm sorry, I'm babbling. It just, it's not a question of retro. It's a question of picking up the thread where I feel it was left. I feel like in the '80s, when they with the kind of harmonies they were interested in and stuff like that were abandoned, maybe to a large extent in the '90s, when everything just became parallel fifths and four chords repeated over and over again. That was an aberration from where it ought to go, perhaps. I mean, that's my wager, right? So it's not a retro to '80s. It's just trying to pick up the thread where it was left in the '80s, maybe.
Yeah, I don't think that it's a retro at all. So that was not part of my question, because you have to go?
No.
Okay. You were born in 1980?
Yeah.
So I was 18 in 1980.
Uh-huh.
And I remember I recently did a feature for this radio station called Synth Pop Memories, or Souvenirs. And I recalled this kind of first British phase of synth pop where it was about dehumanization, talking about artists like John Fox and the first Human League stuff, not when it was so poppy, etc. And what I find interesting is that what you do it's a totally different stance. It doesn't have anything to do with
dehumanization.
Yeah, it doesn't have to do with dehumanization. It doesn't have to do. It's not the Kraftwerk model, and it's also not this kind of total affirmation of the present day that was taking later.
Duran.
Yeah, exactly. So it's nothing like that. And so for me, it's just
and so this maybe gets at what it is about to a certain extent. Is what's interesting to me about any of the things you just said, like Human League or Duran, which obviously are coming from two totally different places. Is I'm terrible. I'm terribly old-fashioned. I abstract all that away and just look at the sound, the music. Do you understand? The chords, the melodies, and there I see lots of ideas. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm interested in. Is an affirmation of a musical idea, an intensification of a musical procedure. I mean, this is the ecstasy or the truth or the over-identification. It has nothing to do with riding yachts or being sad that that we live in a consumer society or something. You know what I mean? It's just a musical. It's a musical concern. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm sorry. Maybe something like that.
Totally. So I guess I thought about what would he think about this term metapop, which is
when I saw that I immediately thought of something that is a regular point of reference for me, which is the films of Paul Verhoeven, right? The RoboCop and Starship Troopers, stuff like this, what they're called in English. I mean, are those meta films? Because they're obviously aware of themselves as commercial genre films, but they somehow. Do you understand? But they can be seen as just. So, in other words, if meta implies ironic distance, then maybe I've got a bone or two to pick with it. But
what does that mean, a bone to pick with?
No, it's not meta. I do disagree with meta. It's not ironic distance from the language. It's an over-identification with it. It's about sublimity. You know what I mean? It's about pushing it, about making an intensive use of a major language like pop. Do you know what I mean? Or a major language like a commercial, like an action genre film or something like that. Something interesting happens there, I think. Something ecstatic is approached. artistically when one proceeds in that way. And so that's what the, I guess, meta or not meta, I don't, it's not, my tongue is not in my cheek. Do you know what I mean? That position, I think, has been exhausted thoroughly. The tongue in the cheek, ironic, you know what I mean? And I'm not sure there was ever anything interesting that ever came out of that with respect to pop music. The best, it's not a fascist commitment that I'm talking about, because the commitment I'm talking about would always be an undoing of any kind of fascism altogether. You know what I mean? Any kind of status quo. That's the. Sorry.
No, I totally agree. I understand what you mean.
Very tired. I feel like I'm babbling.
Totally on your side with that, because, like, to me, that's what I really like about your music, or really love, is that it works on the same level as, for instance, the Beatles, and not as it's not like the Beatles, but not as Scritti Politti.
But
it's not Scritti Politti.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly right. The Beatles, in this day and age, I mean, you talked about identities, you talked about the completely administered world, and in defining ourselves through consumption, this kind of thing. I think the whole genre, glow wave and in hardcore and blah 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 and all these things I don't know the names of. That's largely a mechanism of policing, I think. In other words, to say the Beatles and Human League, I mean, they're totally different kinds of music or something. I disagree with that. It's all pop to me. It's all punk rock. I mean, that's another punk rock. I say punk rock, people think of the Pistols and they go, oh, the Beatles aren't punk. You know what I mean? This is nonsense policing to me. There's no thought in any of that so far as I can tell. I mean, what's interesting to me is the singularity these languages all converge on. You know what I mean? This thing they all kind of point to. Again, back to the second question, and I wish we could get into it a little deeper. That's the shortcoming, I think, a lot of times with these conversations and interviews and things like that. Our language is so. This language, the language we inherited, the language that kind of marked our horizon of possibility. You were 18 years older than me. You still were in the same bucket I was in. You know what I mean? It was commercial cinema and pop music. This was the language that was meant to be our kind of artistic horizon of possibility. So to me today, I can't help but suspect a bit of bad faith about some kid who's 30 years old trying to make a movie like Andrei Tarkovsky, or trying to make music like Stockhausen or something like this. You know what I mean? Those are languages from a situation entirely different than our own. We have the language of pop music and of this kind of thing that we have to mobilize. If we want to try to wrest something of ourselves or wrest something, we have to do it from the standpoint of our own situation. We have to express the objective subjectively. You know what I mean? Something along these lines. Yeah. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, well, that was a great saying. I hardly dare to ask the last question. Just say, is there something that you would like to say to that?
Yeah.
It's obvious a question.
No, it is a really good question, and it really pains me that I haven't sat down more and considered all this. I cannot disclaim enough that I reserve the right to not to be held to account for anything that I'm saying. I'm very unthoughtful. I think I would like to consider all this much more. But yes, if we were going to define the art of pop regarding such elements as subject matter, lyrics, vocal delivery, in its various dimensions, essentially, I have wagers, right? And I think we'd proceed negatively in the same way negative theologians or something, right? By saying, well, for instance, like we were talking about earlier, I think instrumental virtuosity is superfluous. It's not our thing, right? Like being able to play the guitar really fast. That's something that's great. You know, let the virtuosos of the German Romanticism or you know whatever play the piano really good. That's not it to me. Another thing, the organic totality. Do you know what I mean? Where the whole is contained in the one little part. Making a rock album that is some grand symphonic Mahlerian. That to me is aberrant too. No. So in other words, I'm having the audacity to say the whole gist of prog, essentially. I love Floyd, but I'm just saying, right? This is my suspicions. The other thing would be it's not. It's not. Yeah, I mean, we could just keep going down the list of what it's not. But yeah, I'm sorry. You'll probably have to edit this or something. I'm mumbling so much, but yeah, no, it's not. I
don't know, maybe.
It's not. Yeah, it's not symphonic. It's not. It's short. It's sweet. It gets straight to the point, and I know it's so terrible because I believe again I got to disclaim a million times. I see the different musics as entirely different, and perhaps there's very little to be gained through making analogies. But if you think about older music, like the symphonies of Beethoven, for instance, the sonata form, where you have one theme, and then in the sonata allegro form, you got two themes, and that's really all there was, the two themes, and then the whole development section is the development of the themes. The pop song, it has three themes. They're not developed, and they have to be as, you know what I mean? They have to be as catchy as that theme that guy got to bank a whole half an hour on. You know what I mean? And we've got to do that in 2 minutes you know what I mean? It's something like this. You know what I mean? And a lot of people would think that's cynical. That this is the whole indictment that's thrown down on us by these people that continue to insist something like the whole bourgeois high art tradition of the contemporary art galleries and stuff continues to exist today, is that this pop and commercial garbage listens for us and watches for us and requires no effort or intention or, and this is what's wrong about it. I think that's what's supremely interesting about it. That it springs on you. You know what I mean? And I think that's a supremely interesting thing about that anything worthwhile ultimately has that moment of reflective as opposed to a determinate moment. You know what I mean? Where it exceeds your. You know what I mean? It overcomes you. I don't know.
Yeah. Period. I'm done.
No. I mean, I feel terrible.
No, it's okay.
I ramble. These are very important questions. I think, especially in the first one, when we start talking about fighting the world and the way the world is administered from on high by these terrible mechanisms and everything like that. I think that's a political question, and I think we've made really cool music and films, our generations, but we haven't made great politics, a politics adequate to that yet. So leave it to them, to the people that would make a medium of politics, to transform the way this music is mediated to the world, and while they're, while we wait for that, we'll keep, all music, imagines the better world that they'll eventually bring about, or something. I'm sorry.
No, it's good. It's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
By the way, I love
about Floyd and that's what, what is my concept of pop? It's something that's actively constructed. Do you understand? So we look at the Atom Heart Mother or Metal, the second side echoes, and that's a wager. That it's an invitation for us to verify through the work. Is that how we want to proceed? You know what I mean? And I put Echoes or Atom Heart Mother up against whatever whatever, a movement from a Brahms symphony or something like that, and it just like it's limper than putting up "I can't get no satisfaction" against it. You know what I mean, or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, the singularity of pop, I think, has more. It's more in that direction, more in the direction of Blitzkrieg Bop than it is in Atom Heart Mother, which I love. You know what I'm saying? But the horns and you know what I mean, and the grand half an hour long. There's amazing music, obviously, that comes out of this. But if our question is what is pop, then I wager, obviously, that it's better approached through following the roads laid down in "She Loves You." You know what I mean? And things along these lines.
Okay,